Edu ọmọ agbe, edu iṣẹ́ mi iṣẹ́ kan ń fi ẹrẹbẹ. Ọmọ anára rẹ̀ sílẹ̀ dóyè, ọ̀nà Ejemu ayé, ọ̀nà àtẹ̀jì oyè gbígbé, ọ̀nà adẹ́pẹ̀ oyè ọ̀nà tìríjẹ, ọ̀nà olóró gbùgbùgbẹ̀ ọ̀nà sọ̀lọ̀. Ọmọkàn kí ṣe àná ọ̀nà kí ọ̀sẹ̀ bí ayamọ́ ọ̀nà. Ọ̀nà ìrókò ìmọ̀jàrùbá kí olé aṣẹ ni pé okun ọmọ eléyìn ìṣòro gbùdùn ọmọ eléyìn ìṣèkúrọ̀ kọ̀tọ́.
History is often unkind to men who build quietly. It remembers conquerors. It celebrates power. But too often, it forgets those who labored in the everyday spaces of community, shaping lives, creating opportunities, and holding society together from within. Yet, now and then, a life emerges that refuses to be forgotten, not because it sought recognition, but because its impact became impossible to erase. High Chief Jacob Obafemi Ajayi was one of such men, a man whose life cannot be measured merely by years, but by influence, by sacrifice, and by the enduring architecture of human lives he helped construct. Wọ́n bí olóyè Jacob Obafemi Ajayi lọ́dún 1926 ságbó ilé Ejemu nílùú Ara Ekiti níjọba ìbílẹ̀ Ìjẹ̀rò. A society deeply rooted in hierarchy, tradition, and communal expectations, but his childhood unfolded under difficult circumstances. The death of his father in 1939 did not only create an emotional vacuum, it disrupted the fragile pathway of formal education available to him. He exited the classroom early with only the most basic literacy, able to read and write in Yoruba, and only a modest grasp of English. Ibi orí bá dání sí làágbé, bàbá rẹ̀ ní fẹ̀yìntì bí ọ̀lẹ láàrí, bá rẹ̀ ní gbẹ́kẹ̀lé, á sì tẹpá mọ́ṣẹ́ ẹni. In many stories, this is where limitation begins. In his case, it was where invention began. Removed from his immediate environment for safety and guidance, he was sent to live with relatives in Isharu near Igbaraoke, now Ondo State, a decision shaped by both maternal instinct and the realities of a community governed by complex traditional power structures. There, he encountered life in its rawest form: subsistence farming, rural discipline, the economics of survival, but more importantly, he encountered choice. It was not the classroom that formed him, it was observation. Bí ìwé yàtọ̀, ọgbọ́n orí làgbà. It was curiosity. It was the quiet insistence that life could be more than what he had seen. The image of an itinerant shoemaker walking long distances between towns became for the young Obafemi a symbol of independence and mastery. That image stayed with him and from the moment he chose skill over circumstances. Relocating to Akure, he apprenticed under a shoemaker, absorbing not just technique, but discipline, patience, and the dignity of craftsmanship. By the time he established his own workshop, he had already begun to redefine himself. But what distinguished him was not simply that he learned a trade, it was that he understood its possibilities. The 1950s marked a decisive turning point. His reputation for honesty and competence attracted the attention of expatriates, men who recognized in him a rare commercial reliability. They did more than patronize him. They introduced him to opportunities. From that moment, Obafemi Ajayi transitioned from being an artisan to becoming an entrepreneur. He entered the world of pools betting at a time when the sector was still emerging in the old Western Nigeria. He did not merely participate, he systematized the business, operating what would become the longest running pools business in the defunct Ondo Province. He earned a name that will outlive him, Ajayi Pools. But his genius was diversification. He moved into distributorship, partnering with major industrial players, Nigerian breweries, Nigerian tarpaulin industry, Western Nigerian plastic. He dealt in cement, engaged in multiple commercial streams, and built networks that connected local enterprise with broader economic structures. All of this with minimal formal education. This was not luck, this was instinct, refined by effort, and crucially, he never stopped learning. Through correspondence courses in commerce and salesmanship, he pursued knowledge across borders, quietly bridging the gap that formal education had denied him. Success for him was never an end point. It was a resources, a tool for intervention, a means of altering the trajectory of others. High Chief Ajayi belonged to a generation that understood leadership not as performance, but as obligation. He invested in people. He relocated young men from Ara Ekiti and surrounding communities to Akure, not as dependents, but as future artisans, traders, and professionals. He paid school fees for others. He provided shelters for others. He crafted pathways for others. His home functioned as an informal institution, part training ground, part refuge, part social equalizer. Within formal structures, he also played his part. As a member of the Ejemu National Self-Help Development Committee, he contributed to grassroots development initiatives long before community development became a policy language. His influence earned him traditional authority as Ejemu of Ara Ekiti and Barafon of Isolo, Akure in Ondo State. But he wore these titles without spectacles. For him, authority was not ornamental, it was functional.
Chief Jacob Obafemi Ajayi, High Chief Ejemu of Ara in Ijero local government and Barafon of Isolo, was my father, a confident, a reliable elder, and somebody who stood firmly for the progress of his children, his entire family at large, and the entire Ara community. He was more or less the liaison officer between the people of Ara and government prior to the creation of Ondo State. He was always on the road to meet with people in the Western State government, urging them to bring needed infrastructure for the community to grow. He was a loving father who cherished education. Because he didn't have the opportunity of much education, he worked around the clock for his children to have very decent education. Unfortunately, he was only able to scratch the problem of education for his children when death came calling.
It was my friend that took me to that man. That man was the late Oba of Iralepo in Akure. So when I got there and he was trying to cross-examine some of us that went there for the job, because he had a bakery then. He got to my turn and he was asking, ọmọ títa ni you this and that. I told him that I'm a daughter to Chief Jacob Ajayi in Isolo. Ó wá ní Ajayi Pools. I said yes. Ó wá ní pé ènìyàn dáadáa ni bàbá, pé tó bá wá olódodo ènìyàn, tó bá ti rí Ajayi Pools, ó ti réyàn gidi nìyẹn. Wípé òun náà fi ṣe sẹ́kítì ẹgbẹ́ wọn o. Wípé ó dẹ̀ ní pọ́lísì tó le, pé irú ẹni yẹn nísìnyí pé tí nígbà tó bá ṣe meeting, tó bá ti yá owó tó bá dá padà, ó ní nǹkan kan wà lára ẹ̀ tó ń ṣe dáadáa. Tó bá tí time tó yẹ kó dá owó yẹn padà tó dá padà, ó ní kò ní tú àṣírí ẹ̀ ní inú ẹgbẹ́. Ó náà ti pè ẹ́ sẹ́yìn pé a ti sọ fún ẹ pé owó yẹn ìpàdé díjọ́ báyìí dá owó ẹ̀ padà kó tó di pé wọ́n ṣèpàdé òkè. Ó ní tó bá dẹ̀ ti fàṣírí sí lọ́wọ́ pé ò tí ì rí òkan kankan pé ó máa bu àṣírí yẹn, pé but kò fẹ́ kéèyàn wà kó má ní òótọ́. Tó bá ti sọ fún, tó bá ti jó òótọ́, á dì í mú, á dẹ̀ back ẹ up títí dé ibi tó lápẹ̀rẹ̀ rere.
He was a pillar in Ara Ekiti, councillor whose ways were few but meaningful, and a man whose actions spoke louder than words. He taught us the importance of hard work, integrity, patience, and respect for elders and tradition. His stories carried lessons. Discipline shaped character, and his laughter brought warmth into our homes. My father believed strongly in unity, peace, and dignity of the Yoruba heritage.
Ó jẹ́ èèyàn tó jẹ́ pé ó mú ọ̀rọ̀ ìlú tán ti bí, ó mú ní ọ̀kúnkúndùn. Torí mo rántí ńgbà ìbọn bá fẹ́ announce bọ́jẹ̀tì láyé Western States, ṣe náà máa jókòó sí ìdí rédíò tá a máa expect kí military governor kó announce ọ̀nà àrà gẹ́gẹ́ bí ìkan lára àwọn ọ̀nà tí ìjọba ṣe kíni tá máa ṣe ní ọdún ẹ̀. Ṣùgbọ́n ó yé Ọlọ́run, we cannot query God. Àgbàdúrà pé àwọn ẹ̀yìn tí wọ́n fi sílẹ̀ kò ní bàjẹ́ lórúkọ Jésù.
Beneath his public life was a deep internal compass. Faith olóògbé olóyè gíga Jacob Obafemi Ajayi fi gbogbo ayé rẹ̀ àti ohun ìní rẹ̀ sí Ọlọ́run. As a committed member of Anglican Communion, he remained actively involved in multiple parishes: St. David's Anglican Church, Akure; Christ Anglican Church, Ekiti; St. John's Anglican Church, Ara Ekiti. But his Christianity was not confined to attendance. It manifested in his conduct, in his generosity without calculation, in his humility despite his successes, in an almost stubborn refusal to ignore the suffering of others.
I went to one man's church. A máa ń pe bàbá yẹn ní bàbá Adéjàre. Bàbá yẹn now pastor ni wọ́n. Bàbá yẹn wá ní àwa lọ ṣe némi ọmọ àbúrò mi, my immediate younger brother, ní church ẹ̀. Àwa lọ sí church yẹn, bàbá yẹn was like, bàbá yẹn wá sọ pé ó wá sọ nínú láàrin ìjọ níbi tá a ti ń ṣe némi pẹ̀lú a lot of people, ló wá ń sọ fún wọn pé bàbá mi pé òun ò lè gbàgbé ẹ̀ títí láíláíláí, pé òun ni first person tó kọ́kọ́ mọ̀ nígbà tó ń dé gbòòrò Àkúrẹ́. Òun ò lówó ilé, òun ò ní nǹkan kan, pé ṣùgbọ́n bàbá mi ló gba òun sílé tó jẹ́ wípé ilé ẹ̀ ló ń gbé lọ́fẹ̀ẹ́ títí kó tó di pé òun find the fit òun.
I knew him as a community man, dedicated businessman, but not too busy for his family. A nurse, a caregiver, and the chief security officer of his house, because I can remember vividly, though I was young, I was less than 6 years when my father died. But I remember that whenever he got home in the evening, if we had slept, he would still go around the house, check where each of us lie down, to check us, adjust us where we are sleeping, and if there is anyone that was having maybe a headache or whatever or cold, he will still apply what you call aboki, not aboniki, aboki. Then he had alapukun as one of his drugs. Then he will still go around to check the back door, check everywhere to be sure that the dogs are locked. Another thing I saw in him was that this early morning prayer meeting, you dare not miss it. You must be there.
Wọ́n fi ọ̀rọ̀ àwọn ọmọ wọn fi jáfara. In fact, a máa ń dúró de bàbá láyé ọjọ́ yẹn ni bó bá ti ń jẹun kó bu òkèlè lé wa lọ́wọ́. A dẹ̀ dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ Ọlọ́run pé pẹ̀lú bá a ṣe rí ó nífẹ̀ẹ́ gbogbo wa bákan náà pẹ̀lú ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ fún ìgbé ayé rere tán gbé. We really miss him. Àtàní ò ní miss bàbá Andrew, a miss wọn lọ́pọ̀lọpọ̀. Ìyá wa gbìyànjú lẹ́yìn ìgbà tán kú tán, wọ́n ṣàfẹ̀gbẹ́ gbé wa, a ṣàdúpẹ́.
Baba mi was a devoted Christian. He loved his family members and his community very much. He trained many people to become great men and women. Baba gave me a pet name, Toyota. He loved me so much, saying that I resembled his late mother. Baba was a happy family man who so much loved his children, and he would check them every night to see that they all slept well. Glory be to God.
In private, he was intensely human, a husband who loved his wives, a father who invested in his children, not only in their comfort, but also in their future. Education was not optional, it was essential. And beyond his biological children, he extended fatherhood outward, absorbing relatives, mentoring dependents, creating a wide interconnected family structure. On April 13, 1976, ọjọ́ kẹtàlá oṣù kẹrin ọdún 1976, kòwé kànkè, kòwé ọ̀hún sì há. He did what he had always done. He showed up for his community. He traveled to Ajayi for the commissioning of an electricity project, a symbol of progress, of modernization and collective aspiration of the people of Ijero community, including Ara Ekiti, his country home. It was not a ceremonial presence, it was commitment. But on his return journey, the story changed. A motor accident ended his life at 50, an age where many are still consolidating power. He had already redistributed ease. He died quite literally in the line of communal duty and collective development. What remains after a man is gone? For some, memories fade. For others, structures collapse. But in rare cases, the man dissolves and the impact remains. High Chief Jacob Obafemi Ajayi belongs to that rare category. His legacy is not a monument. It is human. It exists in the traders he trained, the students he sponsored, the families he stabilized, the communities he strengthened. It exists in the idea that leadership can be both powerful and compassionate, that influence can be exercised without noise, that a man with limited formal education can construct a life of extraordinary consequences. 50 years after his passing, the question is no longer who he was. The question is what life continues to demand of us all. Because in the final analysis, the measure of a man is not found in titles, nor in wealth, nor even in longevity. It is found in what remains when he is no longer here to speak for himself.
The lesson for people to learn from the life of this great man include unity, love of mankind, love of knowledge, hard work, community leadership, and a thoroughbred Christian. In his home, you dare not fail to attend the early morning prayer at 6, whether you were his wife or his children or his brothers or a tenant. In fact, there were instances that he allowed tenants in his home to lead either morning or night prayer. Morning prayer was 6 on the dot and the evening prayer was at 9.
He was always ready to help people with his last penny. He didn't want anyone to suffer. He took the training of his children, extended family members with passion, always ready to help people. He was conferred with chieftaincy titles in Akure and Nara because of his well-known attributes there. A happy family man who loved his wives and children very well. His love for his town made him travel to Ijeru for the commissioning of Ijeru electricity project on 13th of April 1976. He died in an accident when he was returning from Ijeru that very day.
After the death of Baba, I have so many personal experience. The vacuum that Baba left behind cannot be filled by anybody. No more fatherly role, no more fatherly love, no more Baba Kabo or Mokule. Whenever Baba is around, we always welcome him like that. Baba Kabo. Baba will say, oh, Omomi. Honestly, I miss this my so-called father in so many aspects that I cannot continue to mention here.
And in that regard, High Chief Jacob Obafemi Ajayi still speaks. May his soul continue to rest in perfect peace.
Abame la abame, ebame ado, karo emi mo pe ni abame.